Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. William Scott White, yes, an official scientist of the Midnight Society, has once again decided it is time to awaken me from my slumber, as we once again get ready to go werewolf and dogman hunting. Yet please, I do need to attend to something. Absolutely delicious. I have been sleeping for so long, and I really did need some nutritional value. Now that William Scott White has released me from my shackles, without further ado, it is once again time to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, once again it is midnight lycanthropy time here on LordeStarfox Radio. Per request, we are going to be diving into some good old Ohio encounters. And Leon, how you been, man?
Oh, life's treating me well, just as always.
This is good. I think this first one, I'm pretty sure you've heard about this one, but I think the audience will like this. Jody was even saying for some reason this case is slept on down in Ohio. To the audience now, yes, I'm not going to say Ohio every time. I will give us the locations outside of that because, yes, we're going to be covering Ohio. Only makes logical sense, correct? We have November 1982, London. This is a very interesting case from a very straightforward gentleman. Also, it's old school. It is down in, yes, an area where we are going to be doing a documentary near Germantown, hopefully coming out soon with the NADP. This is an OG encounter. Before social media, we have Keith Williams and his wife, Diana, who live in a small house surrounded by dense woods and an old railroad track near London Baptist Church. Recently at night, while Keith has been working, his wife has been being terrorized by something strange. She claims it looks to be bipedal, canine-like, and some sort of strange human animal. It has been looking in all the windows and trying to gain access to their house. Keith is well aware of this happenings, but has been unable to find anything more than these strange bipedal 14-inch human-like canine tracks littering the property. Excited to get coffee and donuts, the following morning, Williams wakes up around 6:30 a.m. to head to the local coffee shop. As he steps outside and gets into his car, he starts it up. He suddenly sees evil itself. There, standing in the back side of his car, leaning down and looking into the windows of the garage, is a 6 to 7 foot tall, athletic, Doberman Pinscher looking Anubis-like canine creature. Terrified, he guns the car in reverse and the mysterious creature leaps away. Getting out of his car and running back inside, he sees the same strange tracks he has found all around his property, leading up and over his roof and down the other side. Once inside, Williams informs his wife that he has just seen something that unfolded before his eyes straight out of a horror movie. Grabbing his shotgun and immediately calling his friend, Williams sits there terrified. By the time the man arrives, it is now daylight, and the pair set off to follow these strange tracks, which lead them through a very densely brushed area, which eventually opened up into an old abandoned tile mill. Continuing to follow the tracks, the men find an old shack behind the mill, which is located between two sets of railroad tracks. It appears locked, seemingly to have no one inside at the moment. Asking around town who lives there, Williams is informed that a loner named George has been taking up inside this strange building, and that he uses the tracks to get around when he walks. Confused, Keith is also informed that George occasionally stops into a local tire shop to help out for extra cash when needed. Now, very interested in speaking with George, Williams stops in and sees the very large man who seemingly is acting very strange and keeping his distance while working on tires. Asking to speak to the man, Keith walks over to this strange man who then backs up into the darkness of the tire shop. Keith, at this point in time, realizes this George guy obviously has no interest in speaking to him, so he heads home. The following day, Keith's friend calls him and tells him that the police are down by that strange cabin, looking at the torn pieces that are the remains of George. Quickly driving over to pick Williams up, he and his friend head over to the scene where they now see another friend who is a deputy on scene. Asking him what had happened, the deputy verified it was George and that they went out to check on the inside of the cabin. Intrigued, Williams and his friend asked if they could look inside. Agreeing, the deputy leads them over. Besides a sink, a can of change, and a few other small belongings, the cabin is completely empty. Even stranger is there's an awful smell of fox piss and massive 5-digit claw marks all over the entire interior of the cabin. Asking the deputy who George was, Keith and his friend are informed he was a drifter who kept to himself and was believed or rumored to supposedly have SS ties. Keith and his wife Diana were forced to move soon after the incident because the activity on their property seemed to be amping up. What do you think of that, man?
That's an interesting story. At first I thought you were going to tell me they saw a Bigfoot-like creature because of the 14-inch footprints, But then it jumps to a canine creature, and I don't know. I wonder, George sounds like he was just kind of a hermit, a loner. He might have just been not wanting to interact with anyone, and so that's why he backed away. And but yeah, that's maybe the Dogman got him. I don't know. Something did.
What's interesting too is it doesn't seem like George was quote unquote this beast. It almost seems like he was keeping something in there.
Maybe. I mean, I don't really buy into it, but there are those legends of werewolves and stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe this SS guy had secrets he was hiding.
Jody was telling me too that it was pretty common around that point in time for people that didn't want anything to do with that life anymore, or ones that were on the run to kind of be drifters like that coming through Ohio. And
just a few years ago, some guy who was a prison guard at one of the camps during the war, he's in his 90s and had been living his whole life in America. He got extradited to Germany to face war crime charges. So whether that's legit or not, or they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel for like people to prosecute now, as there are like almost no World War II veterans left.
Yeah, some great observations right there. You would potentially think so. And it's just a really interesting case. Like I said, it's not been covered very much.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I hadn't heard that one.
Yes, this is good. Well, we got another interesting one here for you. 1985, good old Akron. Yeah, the area and the stomping grounds of, well, even though we're not here for sports, most likely everyone will know who LeBron James is. That's where he's from. Not necessarily the greatest area. A group
No.
of teenagers are out exploring in the forest when they realize that an eerie, dark black, human like wolf creature is standing upright on two legs a short distance away, observing them. The group stares at the creature for a few minutes before it seemingly gets bored and turns around back into the darkness of the forest. What do you think of that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I find that, and just based on the area, highly plausible. I lived not too far from Akron, and there is this large national park kind of in between, or that borders Akron and borders Cleveland and the suburbs there. And there's Ohio is a cool place as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people roll their eyes, but we've got these big, productive, important cities like Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, that are still economic powerhouses. And we've got a lot of little towns that are rotting away, but we've also got just a ton of rural areas and woodlands. And it's you would think, oh, Ohio's kind of on the eastern side of the country. It's a older state. It's probably all just like developed in nothing but suburbs and cities and whatnot. But that's not the case. It is. There's a lot of places for things to hide out if they want to, if that's how they live, if they're not just manifesting from portals like we talked about the other night. And I had my weird encounter with that large black wolf that was on all fours. I talked about a few episodes ago in that area. That's near the area where those German Shepherds were. There was a German Shepherd breeder, and we've got pics on the NADP website. Yeah, there's just a lot of history as far as these sightings up there, and so I could totally believe it. And like this happened in the 1980s. This was before Dogman was a household name, in at least in the cryptid world. So these kids, they're either coming up with a super crazy story of essentially a werewolf, or they saw something.
Why do you think Keith saw what he claimed to be a Doberman pinscher, almost Anubis-like one? I've heard the Anubis reference before, but I believe that's the first time I've ever heard the Doberman pinscher.
I've heard some people describe them as Doberman pinscher like. But of course, we're talking about, it seems like there's a lot of different physical descriptions. Some people describe them as being very shaggy with long wolf-like hair. Other people say they're like mangy, and have like sparse hair, on areas of their body. And then I've heard of the sleek, short-haired Doberman pinscher Anubis type too. And it could just have to do with how pointy the ears are. Almost everyone agrees that they have these very long, pointy, erect ears. That may just have stood out to him, and that's why he associated with Anubis, the jackal head. Or it really did look like Anubis because it was whatever spiritual entity, or related to whatever spiritual entity that the Egyptians, saw and worshipped and believed in. I don't know, but
Wow, great observations. I personally, like I said, that's the first time I heard the Doberman pinscher. I've definitely heard the jackal Anubis-like look, which was super interesting. But yeah, again, here we go.
And you got to figure some guy living in a Rust Belt manufacturing town area, a rural area, really, based on the description of Ohio in the 1980s. He may not it's the whole zebra or horse type of thing. He's more probably going to be familiar with a Doberman pinscher than a jackal. And yeah, that's people are going to use whatever point of reference they have to draw similarities, to find a pattern instinctively. Where our brains work on pattern recognition. So
yes, isn't that the truth, my friend? Well, we got another pretty interesting one here for you. We have 1986. Youngstown. Numerous homeless people have been found badly mauled and torn to pieces by what local police have reportedly said must be large feral dogs. Locals seem to believe something very dark is at play. What do you think of that, man?
Yeah, I mean that story was very intense and I would say, fairly credible. Um, so, once again, Youngstown, it's a medium-sized city. It's probably was bigger in the 1980s. It's definitely started to fall apart and decay. Um, and but not, I mean, it's surrounded on several sides of it by basically woods and farmland and rural areas. So yeah, why not think that something might have wandered in and made a home in an abandoned factory and chased off homeless people that might also have thought that its factory was a good place to shelter from the weather or whatever.
Excellent stuff right there. Nightmare fuel. Well, again, it's always great to sit down with you. Is there anything else you would like to touch base on tonight before we let you get rolling, brother?
No, but we should talk about Ohio more. There's a lot of interesting things like the mounds and the giant bones that were found in the mounds by the farmers, as they developed the land. The fact that at least when the white man came along, there were very few Native American tribes that actually made permanent home in Ohio. I mean, once again, map borders are irrelevant here. So yeah, there were like the Shawnee down by the Ohio River and Iroquois and or not Arapaho, but I'm trying to remember the name. Anyway, some of those northern tribes up in like the northeast part of the state, but for the most part, Ohio is actually almost like this shared hunting ground by various Indian tribes. Very few of them lived here, but periodically during the right time of the year, they would come to Ohio and hunt the game, and then they'd bring it back to wherever their main village was. So I don't know the reason for that, but that's a very interesting thing. Why would they not want to make their home in this rich land? There's all sorts of interesting cryptids that have, aside from like Dogman and Bigfoot, that have been spotted here, and so yeah, it'd be a fun topic to cover again in the future.
Yes, we will definitely keep on diving into some Ohio stuff for sure, because I've had some people asking that. Well, to the audience, we do need to allow Mr. William White to get back to things he needs to attend to. No worries, though. He is a bi-weekly host. You will catch him back on here sooner than later. And we have a ton of previous episodes down below in the good old playlist. Just head down there, click on it, check it out if you'd like to nerd out and get some great information. Well, yes, William is a scientist, so this is the way to go. Yet, this will be the conclusion of the meeting for the Midnight Society in the early hours of the morning. We do need to hide from the sunlight. Thanks for hanging out tonight, man.
Hey, always a pleasure.
Ooh, my creatures of the night, you legends, you. I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the truth to the algorithm. And remember, there are things that go bump in the night.